What's up everyone? I'm Twisted. The first season of 2026 is about a month away, and we already know it's going to be based on Demacia. But what exactly can we expect in terms of content and especially in terms of lore? Well, Riot has actually given us a lot of clues already, from official statements to stuff that's now on PBE, so that's what I'll be discussing in this video. Also don't worry, I won't show any major leaks here. Starting with official statements, Medler has said that the themes of Season 1 will be Unity, Hope, Justice and Righteous Judgment. He says we're going back to old school Demacia, back to what some would consider the golden age of the country, when it was a beacon of hope and a bastion of justice. He also said that they chose Demacia from an early time period to focus on the noble, heroic and stable place to live rather than the shades of grey that come later in the timeline. So I think it's safe to say that we won't be getting anything about the Mage Oppression and Rebellion, at least not in the first season. Though it is a bit questionable to call the golden age of Demacia the period before the oppressed group rebelled, right? Well, maybe that's not what he meant. You see, it's a common misconception to think that Demacia was always against mages, mostly because this was retconned in 2023 with the release of the Mage Seeker game, and so not everyone really knows about it. In the game, we learned that Demacia was actually built by mages using magic. It was the nobility that slowly over time spread this fear of magic, which eventually led to the creation of the Mage Seeker Order and the status quo of today. So, if in this season we go back to the foundation of the kingdom, then yes, we are going back to the so-called Golden Age, a time before the oppression. And the new items on PBE could be confirming this. We got this one called Demacia Wasn't Built in a Day, which will be available during Demacia Rising, the upcoming minigame or event. This obviously alludes to the foundation of the kingdom. This building right here can also be seen in the mission banners for an upcoming game inside the client. The buildings not having so much Petricite could just be because they are located in the outskirts of the kingdom, but most likely these are actually from the early days of Demacia. We'll come back to this minigame in a second, but before that we also got two new icons with Poppy and Galio. These two are amongst the oldest Demacian champions, alongside Kayle and Morgana. Poppy's hammer used to belong to the guy that founded Demacia, who was basically her best friend, and Galio was built shortly after the foundation of the kingdom. So seeing them together in the early days of Demacia would make a lot of sense. On top of this, we are also getting new titles, and one of them has the description Chapter 2 Defended Zephira, with Zephira perhaps being the location we see in this upcoming game. The city of Zephira was one of the earliest Demacian settlements. It was here that, according to legend, Morgana and Kayle fought, and I quote, an army of hate. In modern days, this city is in ruins, and fun fact, this is actually the main location from the Mage Seeker game. It was never confirmed, so take this with a grain of salt, but it's possible that this battle is the one we see in the Still Here cinematic. Here Morgana and Kayle fight Aatrox and his soldiers, which could be considered an army of hate. If this is indeed the Battle of Zephira, then we might be getting more context about this cinematic in the next season. And this might also explain why Morgana was chosen to get a lore skin, since upcoming lore might feature her in some way. We've also gotten a small teaser for the new cinematic in the form of this background for the upcoming battle pass. At least I assume this will be from the cinematic, but this hasn't been confirmed yet. Looking at the art style, this might be something a bit more realistic than what we got this year. It's not much, but it does remind me more of the style from Still Here, which as I mentioned is where we get these scenes right here. It's also worth bringing up that the events of the cinematic were explicitly mentioned by Shen in the last season of 2025. While it made sense in context since he was talking with Canon and Yunara about the Darkin, this could have also been a small teaser for next year. In fact, this art right here might show up in an upcoming comic, as the one at the bottom was the cover of a comic released this year. Also transitioning from a somewhat Darkin focused season to one that also starts with the Darkin could make sense. But I could also be way off here and the events of the cinematic won't be mentioned next year. The Noxian season also explored the past of the region, giving us a lot more context about it. However, this was not all that was explored. So besides the early days of Demacia, what can we expect? Here we don't really know much, but it was teased that the new season cinematic might feature Lux, Garen, Jarvan and Galio. These are amongst the most popular Demacian champions, so it makes sense. But honestly, this could also be shown here because they are popular and not because they'll show up in the cinematic. But I do believe we'll see some of these champions in this season, regardless if they are in the cinematic or not. Again, they are popular after all. We're also getting an icon and emote for Quinn, so she's likely getting some love as well. About time. We've also gotten confirmation about Shyvana's update, which is likely coming in Act 2 of the season. The aunt of Lux and Garen, Tiana Crownguard, could also show up somewhere as she's also getting an emote. Inside the map are references to the Durand family, Cithria and Jarvan III, so we can add those to the list as well, but grain of salt, it's not like references in the map have meant much in the past, RIP Shen and the Keeper of Masks. We also can't forget that we are getting a brand new Demacian champion, or at least a champion related to the region. Though, considering that the last Demacian champion came out almost 7 years ago, I think the next champion will most likely be from Demacia. It's kinda hard seeing them being from the early days of the kingdom, however, because they will need to be a Yordle or something to live for so long. So it will most likely be a normal human from modern Demacia. And considering the season is going to focus on the hopeful, just, noble, heroic side of the region, they'll probably just be a soldier or ranger or healer, something vanilla like that. Since Welcome to Noxus had a champion literally arriving in Noxus after a long time, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw something similar here. Perhaps a character from the outskirts of Demacia, or even a refugee from another region, arriving in a capital for the first time. This can also work as an introduction of the region for new players and new lore fans. So, to summarize, I'm expecting the season to start with an expansion of the lore of Demacia's past. Zephira and the battle that happened there will 100% be a major focus, but we could also see the foundation of the kingdom with Orlon or the creation of Galio with Durand. Then, still in Act 1, we'll transition into a brand new story revolving around the new champion. Then later in Act 2, we'll probably get a new story about Shyvana. Personally, I'm not expecting a retcon to her lore, more like a new chapter just like we saw with LeBlanc. And then, if Riot wants to once again tell a continuous story throughout the whole year, I expect Demacia's story to end with a teaser for Season 2. Very early prediction, but Demacia doesn't have that many ties to other regions. So if I had to bet, we might be seeing Targon next, if the sisters are indeed playing a major role this season. But it's way too early to even talk about this. As I've said in the past, I don't expect 2026 to directly continue the story of 2025. We might see it being referenced, for example with Shin's fate, but that's about it. The same way 2025 was a continuation of Arcane, but not really a sequel per se. And as I've also said, I'm not expecting Riot to use thematic seasons to retell old stories, at least not so soon. At best, we get references to them, like the conquests of Mordekaiser or the difficult past of Shin, but these are here just to give us a bit more context while a new story is unfolding. These past stories are not the focus, they are the foundations for new stories. Now, what will these new stories be about? It's impossible to say right now. But besides the ones taking place in the past, the rest are likely taking place around the same time as the previous seasons. Shortly after Swain's coup, but before the Mage Rebellion. This means Jarvan III is still alive, Lux being a mage is still a secret, Silas is still in prison, modern Demacians haven't seen Galio wake up, and someone's journey is just starting. To end this video, I also want to mention that while rewatching the Season 1 reveal, I noticed that at the end we can find TFT, Wild Rift and Legends of Runeterra being mentioned in the copyright section. This is something that only happens when said games are mentioned in the video, for example during major events. Regular videos, including the previous dev updates, usually only mention League of Legends. It's possible that future videos about the Demacian season will actually mention these games, for example if there's a Demacian event coming to all of them around the same time. Take this with a huge grain of salt, however, this might not really mean anything. But if you've seen the recent TFT leak, I might be onto something here. And that's it. This is everything I think we'll see next year. I was also going to talk about Rise and his secret vault in this video, but honestly, that's so out there, it's probably not worth mentioning, at least not yet. Let me know down below what you are expecting in terms of content and lore in 2026. And consider subscribing if you haven't already. It's free and you can always change your mind later. I'm Twisted and I'll see you guys in the next video.